Hey guys, welcome back. So apparently I got bored of Project Apex and I was already crashing out on Noobs in Combat Cold Front. With nothing else to do, I decided, hey, corporate law seems a bit fun. Why not check it out? Although I'm not trying to pursue this as a course in college or whatsoever, it became a sudden interest. Now, keep keep in mind what I'm about to discuss is entirely on my own knowledge. I am not fully equipped regarding corporate law itself, and all knowledge that I have obtained comes from Google, Gemini, and of course a bit of my own historical examples, I'd say. So let's get started, shall we? Now, what we're going to discuss in corporate law is what we call a fidu fiduciary breach. Now, fiduciary means duty. Breach means failure to uphold. So if we combine fiduciary breach, it means failure to uphold of duty, something like that. But again, I am just half certain. I'm half certain, half uncertain if I have the correct. So if you guys have any, like, if I'm wrong, please DM me on Instagram if I am. Now, specifically, fiduciary breaches in corporate law discussions. Keep in mind this appears in like universities, like for example, the University of the Philippines and any other big school that you might want to go pursue law or corporate law whatsoever. It's like what do you call this? Fiduciary breaches. They're very major because mostly they involve corporations. I mean, literally, many people can do it. Like, really, it hits hard the most when the company is already big. Like, for example, if it's a multi-million dollar company or whatsoever. Now, I'm going to give an example of what I learned a bit from Google and Gemini. So, for example, um, there's two partners, and they combine. So we're gonna call the first partner Hannah, and then the other one is Anderson. Let's talk about Hannah first. Hannah sells imports imports like imported goods whatsoever from European and Western countries. Like for example, prosciutto from Italy, wagyu steak from Japan, and then etc. etc. And specifically ingredients and groceries. And then Anderson's Anderson sells guns, and guns like he's an authorized gun dealer. Like for example, brands from Benelli, Armalite, Glock, AUG, Chaytac, Colt, and Beretta whatsoever. Now they kind of combine together because they kind of like they decide to believe in kind of like a private equity philosophy. And so yeah, and specifically Hannah and Anderson, they become somewhat like the it it of something. And when I say it of something, for example, Hannah becomes the it girl of families and private chefs and of course typical other families like in the middle class and above down to the lowers and potentially to the higher societies. Anderson becomes the it boy of militaries, private military companies, armed forces, and basically armed guards or special forces detachments. So why? Well, even if Hannah and Anderson sell different products, there's one thing similar. And what they both have is, hang on, what they both have is affordable prices. So, as from what you can observe here, Hannah and Anderson have affordable prices, no matter the difference of what they sell. So, for example, if Hannah, no, no, let's hang on. If a typical Parmigiano Reggiano costs around 2,500 US dollars because that's the typical suggested retail price. I searched it up on Google. Let's say Hannah can sell it for like only 500 USD. And that's 100% quality coming from Italy. What's from Italy? Or let's say coming from Italy, Vernazza. So 500 US dollars. See the gap? Now, for example, on Anderson's side, and let's say Anderson sells a Benelli M4 auto shotgun. So let's say Anderson sells a Benelli M4 auto shotgun. The SRP is around 2,299 US dollars. Well, Anderson can sell that for only 1,000 US dollars. Now, because of this, many people flock to them. Then all of a sudden, a big war emerged, and this is what we call the Suetonian Thessalian conflict. Now, this war is actually a very heated war, and it lasted from 2026 to 2032. Keep in mind the war is entirely fictional and is for the scenario only. Now, for the Suetonian Thessalian conflict, it was a very heated conflict, with the Suetonians first kind of being vulnerable to uh, Thessalian ambushes because the Thessalians knew the ground better. However, the Suetonians pushed through with resilience. They were able to overwhelm Thessalian defenses, although with the cost of losing majority of aerial assets, and they used their own airborne forces for this. Now, with the Suetonian Thessalian conflict ending heated, like the Thessalians, they're kind of sorry for stuttering there. Like for example, the Thessalians, they lost a big portion of their army. Meanwhile, the Suetonians, even though they won, their economy is in rubbles. Because the Suetonian economy is in rubbles after that war, because basically during the conflict, the Suetonian president Roberto T. Burrows issued that the budget for the agricultural and the economical sector of the Suetonian nation is to be focused on military innovation and expandation. And because of that, even if the Suetonians won the victory against the Thessalians, it is a Pyrrhic victory, meaning a victory with devastating costs. So the civilians are left unfed. So what happens? President Roberto T. Burrows issues a socialist decree wherein all prices must all prices must be super low for now. And here Hannah comes in. Hannah comes in the game. Why? Because her prices are already cheap. And besides, she's not getting government taxes. So because of President Roberto T. Burros's decree, Hannah basically becomes a monopoly. And what is a monopoly? If we're going to go back to economics class, a monopoly is someone that is basically dominant. Like for example, the Meralco Company, or in standings, the Manila Electrical Rail I forgot it a bit, but it's something like the Manila Electrical Railroad Lighting Company. It's something like that. So Hannah basically becomes a monopoly, and the country, and she's making fat profits out of her very high quality but very cheap ingredients, imports, and what her product and what she sells on her products. Now, when after she becomes a monopoly, Hannah and Anderson think of something. They think like, oh, you know, we should expand our profits more. So I think let's become a corporation. Let's become a corporation so we can sell shares. And so they did become a corporation. Hannah and Anderson became a corporation, and they, for example, and then their stocks appeared, like for example the NYCE, the TSX, the TSC, uh, the FSX, the LSE. These are some notable stock exchanges, like for example, the New York Stock Exchange, the Toronto Stock Exchange, the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, the Tokyo Stock Exchange, the London Stock Exchange. So yeah, basically Hannah and Anderson become corporate superpowers. Their company's thriving. Now, there are two Anoni. Anoni is shortcut for anonymous. Anoni investors, and they invested heavily in Hannah and Anderson's company. But then all of a sudden, things take a very dark turn here, and this is where the fiduciary breach pops in. One of Hannah's loyal customers is a is he is a data analyst, or let's say kind of like an economic economic analysts, and we're gonna call this guy uh, Bobson. So Bobson, the economic analyst, tells Hannah and Anderson casually, "Hey guys, I feel like there's gonna be like a market crash. I think there's gonna be like a market crash like 3 weeks from now, kind of. Who knows? Maybe." He like Bobson does it casually and impulsively, but he realized he wasn't supposed to leak that information. And so what does Hannah and Anderson do? They take advantage of that information. So what do they do to the two anonymous buyers? First, they liquidate all their shareholdings within their own company. Next, they keep CEO, because the investors don't know how to run the company, only they do. So they keep CEO, at the meantime liquidating all their shares. However, 3 weeks within 3 weeks, they secretly retire, and then the next day hits. They keep CEO. For example, here they liquidate and they keep CEO 3 weeks. On second day, they retire. So they retire. Now after they retire, market crash hits, and it goes push. Market crash goes push. So what happens? The two Anoni investors, they lost they lost $3 million. $3 million US dollars. They lost that when the crash hit. So here is an example of fiduciary breach. Why? Well, you can already see it from here. Hannah and Anderson, they kind of left the company once they knew that there was gonna be a crash, as a loyal customer by the name of Bobson, who turns out to be an economic analyst, kind of like reveals it to them casually and impulsively. So for a corporate lawyer stance, how do you kind of solve it? Well, for me as a 16 year old, I don't know how. But we can but I can help you get close a bit to solving it. And here, this is where history comes in, and which is why I said we're going to use history, and I use a bit of my historical wit here. So we're going to apply a bit of history. So here, for example, in Hannah and Anderson's case, where they kind of like performed a fiduciary breach by discreetly liquidating all of their assets or stakeholdings that they had with their own company, remained CEO, and then retired before the crash hits. What we can do here is apply a historical example to solve the to I mean not solve but like get close to solving it. So we're going to use like a historical example. For example, the Sepoy mutiny. If you guys remember, I'm not sure. I think back in grade 8, maybe you guys discussed this whatsoever. If you don't, or if you guys don't know, the Sepoy Mutiny was kind of like a mutiny made by made by the Sepoys. Now, what were Sepoys? Sepoys were Indians. They were Indians that were enlisted into the British military or into the British East India Company. Now, sorry for a bit of the background information there, but we don't. But here, we don't need to know about the whole Sepoy mutiny. What we just need to know is the process of what happened. So, for example, in the Sepoy mutiny, what was the process? Well, the process was information undisclosed. Surprisingly, that mirrors with Hannah and Anderson. Why? Because they did not disclose, or they did not tell that to their anonymous investors that, hey, the market's gonna crash. Instead, they secretly liquidated all their assets and then did all that stuff to come out clean. So now, as you can see here, as you can observe, that the Sepoy mutiny is applicable here. Not because like there's like a specific coincidentalities that are inlapsing with, like for example, the days yippity yappity fugazi fugazi. It's because of the pattern. The pattern is why. And what was it? Was information that is undisclosed. Now, typically, from what I observe, mostly corporate lawyers, the way they're going to try and solve this case is that they're gonna try and like get whistleblowers protections, and mostly they're gonna try and like what do you call this? Head straight for the secretary or documentator department, something like that. Because, for example, if you because like they won't go to a CEO, of course. I don't know why. Because if you go to a CEO and ask them if they did it, it's like asking a corrupt politician, "Are you corrupt?" Of course, they're absolutely gonna say no. So that's why you head for like the documentation departments, like the secretary departments whatsoever, just so that you could like kind of like get close and prove to it. But overall, here, what I'm just trying to show you is how I think in my perspective we can get close to solving a corporate law case, something like that. And fiduciary breaches kind of like mostly appear in, for example, universities like UP or whatsoever or any other. It's gonna be a it's gonna be a big one. But overall, that's all really regarding my thought process and my small discussion on fiduciary breach. you can use or apply a bit of historical examples to kind of like get close a bit to the to solve it. Because specifically, once you know once you know a pattern, you're once you know a specific pattern, it's gonna start to feel a bit easy because once you see a pattern, you're gonna kind of like want to follow that pattern. Now, well, I'll leave you to it, guys, on what do you think. But again, some again a small summary of our lesson of our small discussion. First, we made a story about Hannah and Anderson, and we discussed how they how their business started, and like how did they made profits, and how they turned into a corporation publishing shares, and then once they knew about a market crash, how they discreetly and tried to escape from it. And we also learned here that we can apply historical examples here to kind of get close a bit to solve the problem or the scenario. Once again, guys, this is Yuri. Uh, Thank you so much for maybe viewing. Have a great night. I recorded this at around 12:53 a.m. Anyways, you guys take care. Have a great day. Thank you so much. I'll see you all again soon.